Morning you guys, it's Karen and I'm here to discuss cacao oil. This was highly requested over the past year ingredient spotlight ingredient. So I have bought cacao oil. The one I've got is by Native Botanics. I got it from Amazon, and unfortunately the packaging isn't great. It's one of those where, you know, it is a dropper bottle, but it's got so oily that it won't stay done up. And so it springs open, which means that it could leak. So I have decanted mine into just a small clear bottle. I just get these from Amazon as well. And then I've just labelled it. So that's where I'm using it from. So I have been using this I've been using it for the last 5 days. And then I had a break from it of about 2 weeks, and I was using it for about a week before that, maybe a little bit less than that, and I thought I had a bad reaction to it. What I did was I stopped at the 3 skincare items that I thought might have contributed, and I'm adding them in one by one again to see which one caused it, and so it definitely wasn't the cacao oil. So that's a great start. So firstly, I've got my notes here as always. This cacao oil has so many different names. I've never come across an ingredient that has so many different names to it. It is called Orinoco nut, tack nut, inchy nut, nuez de barinas, nogal de barquisimeto, Carotenoids orinescens euphorbiaceae. I have no idea if I'm saying these right, but there's all sorts of different names for it. So it made it quite difficult, because when I was researching to see if there was any studies, any evidence, anything for this, I had to make sure I checked every single a different name. It's from a tree that grows in Venezuela, Colombia and Ecuador, and it's the fruit of the tree. The fruit of the tree has seeds that look like nuts. They're very big, and so it's referred to as a tack nut, an inchy nut, etc, etc. These nuts that produce oil, of which 76% is linoleic oil, so that's polyunsaturated, and that's the best kind of oil to have in an oil. The best ratio is to have more linoleic acid, especially if you have acne-prone skin. Let me tell you about the claims that are out there for cacao oil, because they are probably the most of most interest to you. The two main claims are that it has more vitamin E than argan oil, and that it has more retinol than rosehip oil. So let's take the more vitamin E than argan oil. I would say that that's probably true. I haven't looked into the amount of vitamin E in argan oil, because I can tell you that this does have a lot of vitamin E. There has been a study showing that it has all different type of tocopherols, vitamin E basically, and so it definitely has a high content of vitamin E. But what I would say about that is I don't think vitamin E is a wonder product. I've done an ingredient spotlight video on vitamin E, and I think from memory the conclusion was that it's not a bad product, but neither, like I said, is it a miracle product. It may be good for dry skin, but there's no overwhelming evidence that it is anything other than potentially good as a wound healer. So I suspect that is true. But the other claim is that it has, I've seen this so many times, 3 times more retinol than rosehip oil. And that claim actually doesn't make any sense. The reason it doesn't make any sense is because in rosehip oil, there are trace amounts of tretinoin. And in cacao oil, there is carotenoids, which carotenoids are a pro-vitamin A, so they are what comes before a product is converted into vitamin A or retinol. So retinol is vitamin A, and that's the product in the middle here. Cacao oil does not have retinol in it. It has carotenoids in it, so it has the thing that comes before retinol. Rosehip has something that's stronger. So if you think if a product comes before vitamin A, it's in essence, it's weaker because it needs to be converted into retinol, which will then need to be converted into retinoic acid or tretinoin. Rosehip has tretinoin in it, has trace amounts of tretinoin in it. This has amounts of carotenoids in it, so it has pro-vitamin A. So this one needs to be converted twice before it becomes the same product that is in the rosehip oil. So you can't say that it has 3 times more, because they aren't comparable products. However, I have done the maths, because there is a table that talks about retinol equivalent, so RE, and it will give a measurement of the carotenoids that are in here and what their RE measurement is, their retinol equivalency is. And so the retinol equivalent in this is 294, which I then had to work out exactly how many nuts they tested. I'll link to the documentation that I used, the study that they used to assess the contents of the cacao oil. And it turns out that this is equivalent, it has equivalency of about 1% retinol. But that's equivalency if it were retinol, but it's not. It has to be converted into retinol. So it's never going to be anything like using a 1% retinol. I know it might be hard to grasp, but it really is apples and oranges. They are different things. You know, you have to turn one into another. And so a pound of apples and a pound of oranges might weigh the same and might give you the same amount of vitamins, but they still are very different things, and you won't get exactly the same thing from the both of them. And it's the same with carotenoids. They may have an equivalent to retinol, which, like I said, is quite high. From my calculations, it looks like it's the equivalent of about 1% retinol, but it certainly won't act anything like a 1% retinol, because in your skin it needs to convert to retinol. And I've certainly found that, because as you probably know, I am very sensitive to retinol, not so much to tretinoin, which is actually a stronger product, but I am very sensitive to retinol, particularly on my neck, which is why this was in one of my suspicious categories of ingredients when my skin broke out. Basically, I had red lumps all under my eyes, all down my cheeks, all on the top of my lip, all down here. They were sort of blisters, little hives. It's allergic dermatitis basically. And I stopped using this because I thought, well, that's interesting. If it's a 1% equivalent, maybe this could be that strong, maybe it could work that well. And I did read one review from a lady that said she did peel when using this. However, she doesn't say what other things she's using, so I would personally have a question mark over whether or not it was this that caused peeling, because like I said, it's got carotenoids in it, which would not make you peel on their own. They would need to be converted into retinol, then converted into tretinoin or retinoic acid. One thing that's extremely interesting to me about cacao oil, and I always find it amazing how my worlds of being interested in animal welfare and beauty can overlap, if you like, is that cacao oil is a potential way of saving the rainforests. So something that I avoid is palm oil. I avoid buying palm oil if I can. I haven't necessarily actually checked my cosmetics. I've concentrated mostly on food because it's in a lot of foodstuffs. Palm oil, in case you weren't aware, is something that is causing the rainforest to be destroyed. And that results in things like orangutans being... There's this program on at the moment that you may be watching. I've been watching it, the Jungle School for Orangutans, and they end up being orphaned because the orangutans are being shot so that the people can get to the trees and take the trees down, and also that's their natural home, you know, and they're losing their home basically. And so it's absolutely devastating. And so if you can avoid palm oil, that will help that plight. But cacao oil is... the trees are growing in the same place, and what's happening is in some areas where they would have cut down the trees for palm oil, they're actually leaving the trees to grow so they can get these cacao nuts, because cacao oil is becoming so popular. So I think that's a great reason to buy it, if nothing else, you know, because it's a good oil. There's definitely nothing bad about it, and it has a great outcome, you know, it has a great positive benefit to animals ultimately. So that's something that appeals to me about it. But actually, as an oil, I really enjoy it. I'll show you it. It's not anything, I don't think you'll see anything unusual from me putting it on my hand, but it is a very oily oil. You can see it's got a lot of shine to it. It's a very glossy, silky oil. You don't need very much at all. I put 2 pumps on there and you can see how much that would cover. It's not at all a dry oil, so it's nothing like squalane. You guys know I don't like squalane, but I do like that this, although it's very, very oily, it actually sinks in quite quickly. It absorbs very well, and it doesn't feel like it's going to clog up your face. And I tell you, the thing that I compare it to is marula oil. I don't like marula oil, but to be fair, I've only tried the ordinary marula oil, but that marula oil to me felt very thick, and if I had dry skin, I can see how I would love to put something like that on, because it felt like it was going to do something. But it also, I was just like, it feels like it's going to clog my skin. I wouldn't have been surprised if I woke up with spots, you know, whereas this, can you see that that's it? Kind of, there's still a nice soft feeling there, but it's not, that glossiness is gone, and you could use this without having to worry about putting something else on top. I don't know how many people do that, whether that's just me. If I use an oil, I often put a moisturiser on top, not because the moisturiser will go through, because often it won't, but because I don't want, you know, to get oil in my hair, or I just want to sort of seal it in. I just want to give it a seal, and I don't feel that I needed to do that with this one. But my skin felt super soft. Yeah, it's been a really nice oil to use. I've obviously only used it for less than a month, so I can't comment on any benefits to my skin, and I'm not doing a you know, before and after or anything, because I don't believe this isn't an active. It's not going to make that much of a difference to anything, other than it's a good product to have for me with having dry skin and you know, flaky skin. It's just a nice one for me to include. In terms of research, I can find nothing for Cacay oil other than in food. You know, it is something that is edible, and I can find some research in that area, but nothing topical at all. So there is no evidence that this works for anything. That doesn't mean it doesn't work. I'm just saying there is no evidence currently that it works for anything specifically. The one I bought, like I said, is by Native Botanics. This one was $16.99. I'm just looking at my notes, and this one isn't organic. That's the only downside. They did seem to be quite expensive, the Cacay oils, because $16.99 was actually one of the less expensive ones. I was either going to get this or the one by Nascents, but they're both not organic. There's no scent to them, by the way, and there's no colour, so you don't need to worry about any staining, and there's no scent at all. You know how some oils can have a kind of musty, dusty smell? I haven't noticed any scent from this at all. But the Cacay Naturals one, which I believe is popular in the US, is organic, but it's not cold pressed. Whereas, does it say on the front of this? I'm pretty sure that this one is cold pressed. But obviously cold pressed organic is the best choice. But yeah, this is the one that I've tried. This is the one that I'm enjoying, but obviously the packaging isn't great. So would I recommend it? Yes, I would definitely recommend it as a nice oil, but I wouldn't recommend it as an anti-ager, other than as an aside to all of your other anti-aging things. Like, don't rely on this. And I said the same about Rosehip, and if I had to say which one, Rosehip or Cacay, there really isn't a way of knowing, because this has carotenoids in it, the other one has trace amounts of tretinoin in it. But as I said in the other video, it depends on the type of rosehip oil that's used. It depends on how it was packaged. There was studies done that showed there was no tretinoin in any of the rosehip oil, and it could be the same with Cacay oil. There's been no tests done other than that one study on the fresh oil, but there's been none done on commercial oils to see if there's any carotenoids left in the finished product, whether it's survived through the commercial procedures, you know. So I wouldn't even think about that. I wouldn't even count that as this has retinol in it, or this is part of my anti-aging routine. This is just a nice oil, in my opinion. So when choosing between Rosehip and Cacay, I would just say choose whichever one is your preferred oil. Some people, like myself, might not like the smell of rosehip. It's got that fishy odour for a while until you get used to it. I've kind of got over that now, and I really enjoy it. So I would probably kind of scroll between the two. You know, I would use Cacay oil, and then I'll use the rest of this, and then if I've got a rosehip oil, I'll use that, because I'm waiting on one from Inky Skincare. I'd probably use Rosehip simply for the fact that I like the one from The Ordinary and it's less expensive, because this is actually quite expensive. But then again, I'd buy this just because I would know I was contributing to, you know, perhaps helping save the rainforest. So there's plus and minuses for both, but I don't think it's the retinol tretinoin would have no impact on my decision. Okay, so that's everything. I would love to know your experiences with cacao oil, especially if you have experienced peeling. I would be very surprised if people have had peeling from cacao oil, and if you have, just have a think about what else you're using in your routine. Are you using any other kind of retinol, any other kind of tretinoin, any acids, any AHAs, BHAs, anything like that, or any vitamin C's? And I would put money that it would be those, because they are all much more potent than this will be. But I'm really interested to hear if people have had that experience from it. I know that a lot of women feel that their skin has looked a lot better with it. So like I said, there isn't research. So all we can go on is people's experiences. And so I'd certainly be willing to use something. If everybody said, my skin looks amazing after using this oil, then it's definitely something I want to give a try, you know. So it'll be interesting to see what I think when I get to the bottom of this bottle. Thank you very much for watching today. Ooh.